Hi everyone, welcome to the visual guide for the Labyrinth of the Ancients Part 1. In this video, we'll look at the first two wings of Crystal Tower. If you're looking for the last two wings, click here to jump to Part 2 of my Crystal Tower guide. The Labyrinth of the Ancients is the first 24-man raid available to players as of patch 2.1. Players are placed into an alliance of 3 groups, and together you set off to defeat the bosses and collect all the loot. My name is Ms. Tech, and I'll be your raid guide. The first thing you'll notice about Crystal Tower is that it doesn't really have any traditional trash pulls. The so-called trash encounters can actually be considered mini-boss events. In this first section, we need to go through 3 of these mini-events before we reach the first boss. You'll notice the floor has 3 different elevations. Throughout these encounters, the room will begin to fill up with some purple goo. Be sure to avoid standing in these as much as possible. Tanks will begin by pulling the smaller mobs first. Watch out for any frontal cones and AoE effects. These Balefors have massive tail swipes and spicy conal breaths, so the tanks should position them sideways to avoid cleaving the raid from both ends. Once all the mobs are down, the next section will open. In this next section, you'll notice the raised section of the floor is a little different. Tanks will grab the smaller adds first. These can be easily AoE'd down. The greater demons will periodically punt back their primary target, so be careful here if your tank gets punted into the goo. An easy way to handle this is to tank these mobs with your back towards the center of the platform. These mobs have no frontal cleave, so it's quite safe to do this. That way, when you're punted backwards, you will still land on the platform and avoid unnecessary damage from that goo. In the third section, tanks will again grab the smaller mobs first before the Dira. Again, watch out for the purple goo and any frontal and AoE effects. I feel like I'm repeating myself. The Dira need to be pointed away from the raid as they do an instant cast frontal cleave that can do a fair bit of damage. Once all the mini boss events are complete, you'll gain access to the first boss room, where we'll fight the Bone Dragon. One thing to note about this room is that it is massive. If you need to, be sure to coordinate with your party what side of the room most of you will be on, or your healers might have some trouble reaching everyone. Again, you'll notice the raised platforms throughout the room. If you've learned anything from the trash, it's that these platforms will help you avoid that purple goo. Be sure to use them when necessary. The main tank will grab the Bone Dragon and take him to the far edge of the room, taking care to stand on the last raised platform. The rest of the raid can position themselves around the boss for now. Just be sure to stand on the platforms when the goo comes out. The Bone Dragon will do an instant cast AoE on a random player, so healers be ready to heal through the incidental damage. Keep an eye out for any debuffs to dispel as well. Throughout the fight, the Bone Dragon will summon skeletal adds that will spawn around the center of the room. The other tanks should grab these and move them as far away from the Bone Dragon as possible. Most tanks will use the platform sections for reference, but it honestly doesn't matter where you take the adds, as long as you understand one important thing. The skeletal adds need to die away from any other skeletal corpses. You'll see the reason for this soon. With the average raid group's damage, 2 sets of skeletal adds will spawn before the Bone Dragon is killed. As long as the tanks make sure to kill these adds away from any other adds, you'll be set up perfectly for the next phase. When the Bone Dragon is killed, the previous skeletal adds will resurrect and begin to run towards the Bone Dragon's corpse. When they res up, these adds are automatically afflicted with a massive heavy on them. This heavy allows you to have enough time to destroy the skeletons before they reach the Bone Dragon. However, if they res up next to each other, these grouped adds will lose their heavy and book it to the dragon, probably faster than your DPS can down them. Should a skeletal add reach the Bone Dragon corpse, it'll explode, dealing a massive AoE blast to the entire alliance. You might be able to handle 1 or 2 of these, but if more skeletons get in, your healers will not be able to keep up with the damage. But again, this is easily avoidable. As long as the tanks are mindful of where they're pulling the skeletal adds in the live phases, you shouldn't have that problem. In the dead phases, the DPS need to split up amongst the skeletal adds and destroy them before they get to the dragon corpse. Once all the skeletal corpses are accounted for, the Bone Dragon will begin to resurrect as well, taking us back into that same phase. Again, tanks should handle the skeletal adds as necessary. This phase is the same as the first one. Once the Bone Dragon is down, the next dead phase is again the same thing. Handle those adds and carry on. In the last live phase, the Bone Dragon will cast a massive frontal cone. Be sure to stay away from this main tanks. Getting feared here can very well wipe the raid, so don't embarrass yourself by falling asleep at the wheel. In this phase, 2 sets of eyes will also spawn around the center of the room. The off tanks should grab enmity on these and keep them off the rest of the raid. Otherwise, they can be ignored while you burn down the Bone Dragon. Once the dragon dies for the 3rd time, the encounter is over and the next wing is open. In the second wing, the alliance will split up into their respective groups for the mini-boss trash encounter. You'll notice 6 platforms in the room, 2 in each section, all with their own colors. The back set of platforms will be empty, and the far set will have their own version of Atmos chilling out on them. These platforms are very important to the mechanics of the fight, so be mindful of your positioning. During the fight, it's absolutely necessary to have at minimum 4 players standing on the back platforms. Doing so will not only unlock the corresponding color platform's Atmos, but it will also prevent the spawn of a massive Iron Giant ad whose cleave will instantly wipe your group. Once all groups are ready, the 4 assigned players, usually the 2 healers and 2 ranged, will run to the back platform and hang out there while the rest of the DPS can begin damaging their Atmos. Until your respective Atmos is killed, adds will spawn from him that should be picked up by the tank. It's quite easy to solo tank this if you want to add some extra damage on Atmos, but if you're having trouble handling the adds, you can alternate tank the adds as they come out. The tanks should position each add sideways to avoid cleaving or tail swiping either platform. Be mindful of the AoE effects cast by the Dira here. Since it's important that the back platform always maintains their position, you should interrupt any AoE effects cast on that group. Now, even if you destroy your Atmos, be sure to keep standing on your platform until it stops glowing. Remember, your platform unlocks another group's Atmos. If you're not positioned properly, they won't be able to destroy their Atmos. Once all 3 mini-bosses are down, you'll gain access to the second boss, Thanatos. The first thing you'll notice are the 3 pots around the outer edges of the room. For healers, note that these pots can and will accept any direct heals or buffs cast on them. Keep that in mind as they play a vital role in this fight. As soon as the encounter is activated, you'll notice that Thanatos is invulnerable to all damage unless you are the group currently with the Astral Realignment debuff. This debuff is cast on the groups in sequence by the demon pots opposite the room. With the way the fight is scripted, Group A will be the first to receive this debuff, making them the only ones that can actually damage Thanatos. The groups will cycle the debuff until Thanatos is down. Note that the debuffs will overlap by about 10 seconds or so, and once the old group loses their debuff, one of the newly phased tanks should provoke Thanatos from the old group. Thanatos himself has a massive frontal knockback with a long cast time. There is no visual cue aside from his cast bar, so tanks be careful to avoid this as necessary, and any other members should avoid standing in front of him. The rest of the groups will hang out and handle any adds. Thanatos will spawn a number of Dira adds. These will cast massive AoE effects and have spicy frontal cones, so any tanks with nothing else to do should be on the lookout for these. Move them away from the group and have your DPS take them down. DPS should be on the lookout for the Sandmen adds that will spawn in the group in the center of the room. They are linked to a specific pot and will slowly make their way over to damage it. These should be taken down immediately, and any damage done to your pot should be healed as soon as possible. Healers need to watch not only their groups but also their pots. Thanatos will periodically grab one of the pots and drag it slowly towards him. Should the pot reach Thanatos, it will be destroyed. As the pot is what controls the group's ability to phase with Thanatos, you obviously don't want your pots dying. Anytime Thanatos begins to drag a pot to him, the pot will emote, "Give me a cure," at which point healers should spot heal the pot. Once the pot is back to full health, it will return to its platform. Now, the more I talk about this fight, the more I realize it's confusing as hell, so let me reiterate the important points. You can only damage Thanatos when you have the Astral Realignment debuff. If you have the debuff, focus Thanatos, ignore everything else. If you don't have the debuff, kill any adds that are on the screen, focusing on the Sandmen harassing your pots and the Dira stalking your healers. Once you get the debuff, switch to Thanatos immediately. Don't waste that precious boss damage time. The other group should be finishing off the adds. If you're a healer, keep an eye on your pot or any other pot you might notice is struggling. When it calls for it, be sure to heal it to full. Tanks be sure to provoke off of the old group as soon as they lose their debuff. With about average raid damage, Thanatos should be dead or close to it by the time Group A gets a debuff for the second time. Just keep an eye on what you should be doing at what time, and rinse repeat until he's down. Congratulations on any new loot. Once Thanatos is down, you'll gain access to the third wing where you'll face the intimidating King Behemoth, all of which is covered in Part 2. If you have any questions about Part 1, let me know. As always, thanks for watching. Till next time.